What's happening, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to the Crash Bang Boom podcast. For episode 247, we have drummer Zach Coleman of Denver, Colorado's Khemmis. Zach and I get into the new record Deceiver, due out November 19th, as well as beer, bees, drums, album cover art, Molly Hatchet, you name it, and a whole lot more. It was a good time talking to him, and I hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and Amazon Music Podcast. Feel free to check out the previous 240 plus episodes. Give me a like, a subscription, and or a positive review, as the support is appreciated. So without further ado, here we go. Zach Coleman-Khemmis, November 19th, Deceiver, Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
All right, I'm here with Zach Coleman of Denver, Colorado's Khemmis. Zach, what is happening, my dude?
Not much, man. Just relaxing now. Glad to be talking to you. What's going on?
Oh, man, I'm hanging it. It's a dreary-ass, cold, miserable day here in Utah. You're not that far away from me, so I don't know if you have the same fucking miserable weather or not.
Exactly the same. It's cold and started to rain like right when I started talking to you. So
yeah, man. I also appreciate you, as I was saying earlier, not only being on time, but being early. And then I magically guessed, not so magically, that you must have come from a military family, hence your early punctuality, which is unheard of in the music world. So thanks for doing that as well, buddy.
That's right. Yeah. My pleasure. It was drilled into me.
Your dad was a Marine, no less, huh?
Yeah, that's right. So, timeliness was always important, and that was drilled into me from an early age. So it's just become habit now.
You operate in a tough world of musicians who are habitually late, and as I was saying as well, I'm on time. If anything, maybe a skosh early, and oh man, especially like being in New Orleans where everyone runs late and everything's run slow and everything else. Like even in New York, I was like, people are going to be on time here. And I'm still hanging out with artists and musicians. I'm like, nope, still late all the fucking time. I'm the early guy, always.
Yeah, it kind of drives me crazy, but I also realize how neurotic it is to some degree. So I just try to let it go.
Oh my God, man. Well, I know that y'all are like a Denver band. Where are you originally from, man?
I'm from North Texas, kind of the Denton area, if anybody knows where that is. So just northwest of Dallas, about an hour. That was home for me for 25 years, and then I moved out to Denver about 10 years ago. I've been here ever since.
Gotcha.
So.
I'm assuming like most of Texas, pretty flat where you were, no?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Infinitely flat, right?
That's pretty much all there, just flat all around every direction.
All around, man. I dig Denver. My mother lived in a few different towns in little, I guess villages almost in like southern Colorado, and then I did some touring with the band, and we did like all the ski resort towns like Vail and Steamboat Springs. Went out to Telluride and this and that, and like I think some of the towns, I don't know if you've heard of them. My mother lived in Crestone, Greeley, and Alamosa. Do you know any of those?
I know all those, actually.
Do you?
Weirdly enough.
Impressive.
Yeah, that's spread kind of all over.
Yeah.
Damn, playing Vail. That seems like a weird place to play.
It was.
Now James Hetfield lives there. So.
Oh, wow. You know what? You're right about that. I heard an interview and he was talking about living out there and having bees and doing the whole thing. Right. It was probably on Joe Rogan. I was like, dude, I want bees. That sounds amazing. He was talking about how just serene and beautiful it is to just like sit and watch them do all the things, and you get to collect the honey, and it's this awesome symbiotic, like really peaceful existence of like maintaining bees. It seems super cool.
Yeah, for sure. I actually I'm a brewer by trade, make beer, and every year there's a national honey board that has like a little conference, and they'll pay for brewers to come out and kind of do like almost like a timeshare pitch about using honey and beer.
Awesome.
Except they don't sell anything. They just educate you.
Wow.
But as part of that process, you get to suit up and go handle bees and beehives and see the whole thing, and it's really cool. I mean, it sounds pretty lame, but man, it's I was surprised how much I was into it.
That sounds amazing, and nothing like getting like fresh honey. When you can taste it, it's just unbelievable. It's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. The flavor spectrum of it's crazy because all the honeys taste like what they pollinate.
Yeah.
So if they're pollinating like raspberries or something, the honey's gonna taste like that. It's wild.
Bees, unbelievable, man. You mentioned that you're a brewer. I'm totally a redneck from Southeast Louisiana, so for me, I'm totally like the Miller Lite, Coors Light guy. And when I drink them, and so IPAs always taste crazy to me. Are you? Do you partake in the spectrum of beers?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, pretty much everything across the board, including light lager, like what you're talking about, for sure. I drink Coors all the time, and
Yeah.
coming up, I just drank Shiner. That's like all I would drink.
Nice.
So
Yeah, if you're in Texas, I guess Shiner Bock's the thing to drink, huh?
yeah, that or Lone Star.
That or Lone Star. That's the deal. Absolutely,
Hmm.
man. Well, I know the new Chemist record Deceiver, I believe, coming out November 19th. It's a common theme talking to bands because with COVID, there were a lot of bands that might have actually recorded, borderline finished the record prior to COVID, or, i.e., early 2020, first quarter, and then kind of sat on it because if the idea is to tour and support a release and you didn't know when that was going to happen, a lot of bands sat on it. So was Chemist part of that theme, or did y'all actually manage to record something during this, or what was the timeline?
Yeah, it's definitely been pushed back a little bit. We recorded. I think I tracked drums in January of this year. We took more time writing, knowing that we had nothing else to do. So
Yeah.
we were like, all right, well, let's just spend more time on that. And then we had booked studio time, so we went ahead and recorded. And then we were hoping to release it this summer, but really the delays with pressing plants for vinyl pushed it back to November more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it was like we were scrambling trying to get it through even in that time. So it was, if not now, November, it was going to be like we would have to push it to like, I don't know, April of next year. And
Wow.
so it was just for it to make any kind of sense from a release schedule perspective. So yeah, we were like, let's do it now and put everything together as fast as we could to accommodate that. But that was a delay that we knew was going to be like kind of long, but we didn't realize how long it was going to
Yeah.
be. So
Right. And there's so many variables that go into release, especially with a sort of thematic band as yourself, between the merch, all the art, the record release, everything. So it's to get all the ducks in a row when things are delayed. There's that whole side of it as well. It's crazy.
yeah, exactly. And that was the thing. Like we wanted to have the records ready from day one because the people who love our band want to have the record, and
Right.
we want them to have the record.
Yes, you do.
So it felt too weird to have a gap between the release and the actual physical thing. So
Definitely. Well, as I've referenced sort of the recording of it, what was your experience recording it? And that can be in the form of where you recorded it, the gear you used, the room that you recorded the drums in, if you worked with a producer, et cetera. I guess just tell me a little bit about your experience in tracking drums and doing all that for that record.
yeah, this is the third and a half time we've worked with producer engineer Dave Otero, who's a guy out here who records a lot of metal bands and is amazing.
Cool.
But he's like become a real producer for us as well. But the past few albums we've tracked at his studio and in like a pretty small room. But this time we rented a bigger room at this place called the Band Cave down the way, and they just have like a big room that you can rehearse in or track in or whatever. And so we set the drums up there and set up more mics to get a little bit more of natural room sound to the drums this go around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I've wanted to do for years, and I'm really glad we got to do that. And I think we were able to get a little bit of cool different drum sound on this record than the ones before because of that.
Right.
I use the same kit on this album that I did the one before, which is a CNC custom kit,
Nice.
and it's 8-ply maple shell that they do. It's called the Gladstone, the shell that they make. It's like kind of one of their proprietary-esque things,
Yeah.
but it's heavy, and tonally it's like kind of darker, but still loud.
Sure.
And the drums themselves are heavy as they're super heavy. So I have a 14-inch tom, kind of like rack tom, 18-inch floor tom, 24 kick, and then I use a 14-inch. I got a Ludwig Supraphonic snare a
Nice.
couple years ago, and I love that thing.
Yeah, it's a magical snare. I've joked about it throughout the years. I've got two from '76. They're the 14 by fives, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's you pick it up and there's almost nothing to it. It weighs next to nothing. Yet it's one of the most recorded snare drums in the history of music. So they dialed it in way back in the day, and that recipe still works, man.
I was so skeptical of it because it just doesn't look like it much, you
Right.
know? It's like not
Totally.
impressive to look at. And
Nope.
I borrowed one from a buddy and used it, and I was just like, holy shit, I have to get one of these.
They sound amazing.
They sound amazing. And what I love too is like you can tune them up, you can tune them down, and they sound good any way you want to use them.
Yep.
So I use that, and then I use all Peisty cymbals, and mostly for this it was 2002 kind of everything more or less.
Hmm.
I just love the sound of those cymbals. It's classic rock, you know.
Absolutely.
It's a classic rock and roll sound,
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
they're bright but heavy tonally, and yeah, so rock with that, you know. And two crashes, a ride, hi-hats, pretty simple setup all around.
Yeah. When it came time to mixing the record, it sounds like y'all were able to cue in some of those room mics to get you maybe a sound that maybe you didn't feel like you had gotten quite so much previously or something, and you can sense that or hear that in the mix.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not huge, and at times it's more than others. There's like quieter sections on the album
Ah,
where that element is kind of ramped up,
hell yeah.
and it's cool. And when we did those sections, we also like changed tunings, and we changed like the beater on the kick drum, and really
Awesome.
like set that up, set, you know, to have a kind of different sound than the louder parts of the album. So we were able to do a fair amount of tweaking with both, like, you know, where the sounds come from mics, and as well as actual changing the kit up a little bit.
Gotcha. So it sounds like y'all went to a room and recorded the drums. Did you record the other instruments there as well, where you just had a single room and you set a studio up around it? Or
Yeah, everything else was tracked back at Dave's studio,
okay, gotcha,
not in that room. So
gotcha.
at least the way that we've done the Chemist albums up till now, it's kind of everything is tracked separately, and we'll pre-pro out all the songs to click and scratch guitars and
Yeah.
recorded that. So
Do y'all have to tempo map stuff so much? Because I know sometimes with stoner kind of doomy stuff, the exaggerated elasticity, as I like to call it, is definitely a factor with it. You know, if you want to exaggerate maybe a particular section a little bit more, this that happens a lot in this music. So you had to kind of go through that as well.
yeah, to some degree, and a lot of it's really like we record to a click, but we don't fix everything, you know. Like it's not, stuff isn't gridded out. It's like,
Right.
if as long as it's close, you know, and the feel is good, and the parts are where they need to be, it's good to go.
That is a crucial distinction, and one that I realized many years ago as well. For me, the click was always just a reference. I didn't need to be perfectly on top of it. And if somebody's tracking scratch with me or whatever, and it feels right, turn it off until we need to reference it. If something just sounds wonky, then we'll say, all
Yep,
right, maybe we need to affect something from there. But generally speaking, just let it fly. It's really just a reference point, you know?
totally. Yeah, exactly. Because it needs to have that feel, the human feel.
For sure. Well, with the art on these records over the years, there seems to be at least continuity in sort of the themes of them. Has it been the same artist throughout all the years? It has, because I was going to say, if not,
Yeah.
you did a real good job in finding someone else to do the same style. Who's doing them, and sort of who is guiding sort of the aesthetic ideas across the board of that?
Yeah, it's this local guy, Sam Turner, and he's amazing. He does a lot of artwork for the brewery I'm at too, actually. But
Nice.
kind of the original idea was like, as a band, we conceptualized kind of what we wanted to do for the first record to some degree, and it I'd always had this image burned in my brain of being a kid and my dad listening to records and me sitting there staring at the covers, and the Molly Hatchet records with the Frank Frazetta artwork is like
Of
was
course.
burned into my brain. And so we wanted to do something like that, especially for like the first record. So we're like, came up. I think it was definitely the other guys in the band came up with the idea.
Yeah.
Phil and Ben for like the wizard with the like power tube kind of like monolith.
Uh-huh.
Especially with the last couple of albums, it's been Phil and Sam going back and forth. There is like a story kind of connecting the album covers.
Sure.
We like to leave it vague enough for people to kind of bring their own interpretation into what they think is going on. So we'll bring back characters and motifs and imagery from album cover to album cover. And
Right. That consistency is important, I think, especially when you're kind of developing sort of an image around the band, and to have that sort of continuity aesthetically over the course of the records, I think only gets people that much more interested in it, especially sort of within the kind of stoner doom world. But even like in black metal, like a lot of these subgenres, the more continuity you can have with that tied into the merch and tied into the sort of full kind of broad stroke aesthetic of the band, people seem to really get into it that much more. And I think y'all definitely have that.
It's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, it really was. It's a lot of it was just looking at bands like, like Iron Maiden, who have Eddie.
Of course.
And I just thinking about that kind of stuff, and like, not many bands do that anymore, where they have like that kind of mascot or whatever. And
Sure.
we go back and forth on like, should we keep doing it?
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, what's funny, you referenced Molly Hatchet. Talk about, and it's something I've cracked jokes about all the time because I'm a fan of Southern rock and whatnot. But like, if you look at the cover of those records, it quite possibly in the history of music, one of the more deceiving record covers, because you would think it would be like High on Fire, pre-High on Fire. And then you listen to it, it's like, what? This music does not match these record covers at all. This is crazy. What is going on here?
Oh, totally. And even like Nazareth's another good example.
Nazareth,
like you look at the album covers and you're like, oh, this is gonna be fucking crazy. And then you listen to it and you're like, I mean, it's cool, but I thought this was gonna be way heavier.
Totally, man. That is funny. I know y'all signed to Nuclear Blast recently, which kind of puts you alongside bands, that they've had throughout the years between Anthrax, Slayer, Exodus, Testament, and many more. So that's pretty awesome to, I think, even be associated with some of those bigger acts throughout all the years, huh?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's hugely exciting for us. And like, I know everybody in the band, we all grew up listening to those records and
Totally
with bands on Nuclear Blast. So it's crazy
right.
to now be in a band that's on Nuclear Blast. It's been great, and they've been nothing but supportive. So like, it's just been great all around, man.
Yeah. It's interesting, and without getting too specific about it, whatever you would like want to say about it. In modern times, I think even for the last few, God, maybe even 20-ish years now or so, I think the idea was that if you could get some sort of a distribution deal and you could cover the cost of the recording of your own record, then you would still have the cost, upfront costs and whatever else associated with going out on tour. But I guess, how has it been working with them? And because again, y'all are such an aesthetically solid band. I mean, you have your merch sales, you have all the expenses of going out on the road, you have whatever you get from that. Like, I guess in this day and age, what is the benefit in your perspective of having sort of a record deal with somebody like that?
I think it's a couple of things. One of the big things is like having all access to like the wide distribution arm that they have.
Correct.
Like I feel like we've had really great reach in America with the label that we were on before, which is a label that I love, and the guy who runs it, Dave's a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he really killed it for us. But people couldn't buy our record in Europe, really.
Right.
It was hard to get and really expensive. And so it's really nice because they have worldwide reach, to be able to have access to that, and to be able to get our music out through those channels is I mean, probably the biggest thing.
Sure.
And then like pure practicality, there's more resources, so we can spend more time in the studio and spend more time on the records and do cool stuff like, spend more time with the drums and record them in a different room, and have budget and time for that. Because
Right.
everything else, like I recorded drums for the first two albums in one day, and the second record in, or the first two albums in one day, the third record in 2 days. And this new one I did in 3 days, but still, it was even just having that extra day, it was
Yeah.
great, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I got into the thing where I was consistently putting out 5 or 6 song records. So I would just make a deal with whoever was working at the studio. I was like, I'll pay you for a couple hours just to come the night before so we can set up. I'll set everything up. Let's just at least make sure technically everything's connected so we don't roll in. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And then it's technical problems. And then you're, twiddling your fingers trying to track. So I get it. Yeah, it would definitely be nice, though, to really take your time that much more on sounds and everything else. I get it for sure.
yeah, it's just really great. And I mean, to be able to not have the pressure of having to get
Right.
it done by this time and
Yeah.
moving on, it's like taking another swing or two at a song just to see what you get, is
Yeah.
cool to have that luxury of like, I want to do another pass and just throw out some wild fills on this one and see if
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
sounds cool.
Yeah, I think where it got tricky for me and for a lot of people, there was a while there where the sort of buzzword about it was like the 360 deal that like record companies have, where they're getting their profits from everywhere else. And I was like, I don't know what those percentages are necessarily, but also from their perspective, if they invest in a record, I don't know what money they're recouping from those record sales. So I get a little bit of them asking themselves where else they would go to at least not only be reimbursed, but hopefully make some profit so they can also keep their business going. So I see a little bit of both sides of it, It just obviously gets tricky when you start talking about how far the reach of it is. But it sounds like they've been really cool with y'all and supportive in the whole thing, which is great.
100%. I mean, basically, the only feedback they've given us is just go make the best Khemmis record that you can make.
Fantastic.
That's it. Have fun, basically.
That's amazing.
All the other sides of it is like, the negotiation and the specifics of the deal. We were really careful about how, they were willing to work with us on the things we wanted. So we feel like we ended up with a really nice deal at the end of the day. But, you got to be careful about that kind of stuff.
Yes, you do.
Hire a lawyer. We've got a good lawyer that we've been working with, and make sure that you're not going to, put yourself in a bad situation. And I think the thing is just like, that's the time to really spend time and make sure everything looks good.
Yeah, haste makes waste, and the devil's in the details. Both are phrases you hear a lot, but man, they are true.
So true.
It's real.
Yep. And whatever money it costs to like hire somebody to look over that paperwork, it's going to be worth it at the end of the day.
100%.
So that's my advice, I suppose.
Absolutely, man. Well, with touring, it sounds like you do. You're a brewer. You work in that world, and I'm assuming with that you have a little bit of freedom to be able to take off and to come back. That's important, and also can be pretty hard to find for so many musicians to allow themselves the time to go do this, and to balance, of course, the money that a lot of times you could be losing and going out, and how do you sustain yourself, how do you pay your bills when you're gone, all these other increasing obligations financially that you have as you get older. It can be this shit that does definitely not get easier as you get older to do this.
Oh, totally. And I should say I'm also part owner of the business.
Good for you.
It's a double-edged sword in a way. I mean, mostly it's great, because theoretically I can take off whatever time I want, but I also, I run the production, the actual brewing side of it, and I have a team that I care about and want to take care of, and don't want to just, leave them to take on the work that I'm not doing, when I'm gone. So
yeah.
So I have a lot of freedom on one end, but also I need to provide a reasonable workload for these people.
Totally.
It's a balancing act for sure. But it is nice because I do have that flexibility to be able to go out on the road, and what's great is like I can plan production around what the tours are going to be, so I can kind of adjust for what that looks like.
Nice, man. It's the question that keeps on giving because all the answers are different, but generally speaking, all pretty entertaining. So I love to ask bands throughout their careers some of the more ridiculous shows that they've played. There's been no shortage of bands that are like, it's funny how the recurring theme seems to be that people play in like a field somewhere. I don't know if you've been playing in like a barn or in a cornfield with Children of the Corn coming out of the woodwork. But do you have any particularly funny or just bizarre gigs that you played? And, that could be anything from equipment meltdowns to bizarre crowds to bizarre management, or just straight up the venue or the clientele that happened to show up that night who maybe didn't know who you were. And, of course there's the nights where no one shows up.
Right.
That's, there's always that.
There's always that. I mean, geez, where to begin? No, I don't think I've ever played in a field, which I'm kind of bummed.
Yeah, dude, it's never too late to book one.
It's so true. God, man, I've been playing drums in bands for now, like almost for 20 years now, to varying degrees and in different styles and stuff. And so I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. And, I mean, the show with two people there that you find out wasn't promoted when you get there is always a bummer. Had plenty of those. Oh man, I got a funny one of like equipment malfunction. We played this really great fest. I won't mention it by name, but
okay.
Cool festival overall, really great. But before I go to the stage that we're playing, and I see the drum set, and it looks pretty good, but I can tell it's like kind of moving around on the riser a little bit. And
oh boy,
and I'm a caveman and a pretty heavy hitter. And so I go to the stage manager and I'm like, hey, do you think we could get some sandbags maybe or something to throw down in front of the kick drum? And they're like, it should be fine. We've been using it all day. And I'm like, yeah, but do you think you could find something for me? I hear what you're saying. And he's like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I try adjusting the legs, get everything set, whatever. But you know how festival stuff is. You got 10 seconds to get everything done.
Right.
Get everything adjusted somewhat. We start playing, and immediately everything is moving, which is always just like, what do you do? It's part of the deal. But the snare is, in my crotch. The ride is right against the side of me, so I'm just playing real wild style, trying to make it work and whatever. But I look down and the kick drum is just running away from me, and I'm like,
oh boy, it's fucking sucks so bad.
It's so bad.
So
everything's in the wrong place immediately, and I'm like, everything
slides around.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh no, and our songs are long, so right. I'm like, okay, I got 7 more minutes of this. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe it won't be that bad. I'll just after the song I'll adjust it. Well, the kick drum keeps going. I have to stop playing and just pull it back to me and adjust everything. So for a few seconds there's no drumming really going on, and I'm like, oh, I know, this is a mess.
That sucks.
And while this is going on, I'm trying to get the stagehand's attention. He's supposed to be like my guy, and I'm looking over and he's just staring at his phone and he's looking away from the stage, and I'm like, oh no. So I'm like waving at him, trying to get his attention.
Oh, no,
I'm like, come on, man. Like playing.
Fucking help a brother out here. It's your job.
And he's absolutely checked out. And I'm like, oh fuck. Okay.
Oh.
So all that's to say, eventually I get his attention. He sees I'm about to kick this kick drum off the riser and comes over and grabs it and helps me, and he tries taping it down, which I'm like, this isn't gonna work. Anyway, we get to our last song, and at this point I'm pissed basically, because I'm like,
100%.
The set was a mess for me. So I'm like, that's it, I'm just gonna destroy this drum set. I'm just gonna let it all out here. And so the last song we're playing, going to town, and the song ends with like a really simple like drum pattern, but I'm just laying into it, and kick drum is about halfway off the riser, and I'm really laying into it, trying to kick this thing off. At this point I'm like, screw it, let's go. Let's go.
Fuck it.
So I'm basically just standing up, kicking this thing. I managed to not kick it off the riser. I'm like,
Oh, come
And
on,
I'm like,
man. What?
I know, right?
The tape. It was the tape, dude. The tape worked, but in the wrong way.
No. So after the set, we go back. I'm telling the guys, I'm like, man, that was crazy for me. The kick drum kept going. I give them the whole story. And I was like, I was trying to kick it off at the end of the set. And they're like, oh man, you didn't know? And I'm like, what? And they're like, that stagehand had come over and he was holding up the kick drum. He was like on his, knees trying to stay out of the way, and he was holding it. And I'm just
him in the
blasting him. And I was like, oh shit, I feel kind of bad, but also, what are you gonna do?
I know, for real. I tell you what, any drummers that are listening to this, I got this tip from one of my buddies, Michael Brugan, down in New Orleans. Great drummer, played with this band Supergroup and this crazy band Blackula back in the day. Played with Honky for a little while. He had a thing where if you get a pipe flange, you can get like a 3/4 inch floor flange, etc., whatever you want to call it. They always come with those 4 screw holes, and you can get some washers and screw them into a carpet so your bass drum legs go into that, and while you're sitting on it, the bass drum cannot go anywhere. And he hipped me to that a long time ago. Now, my other buddy, Andy Preen, who plays with the band Suplex, that drummer, he's like, that was my idea. Michael got it from me. I'll let them resolve that shit. I don't know who had it first. I got it from Mike personally, so I'll accredit him. But that is the one thing that I've seen that actually works. If you have a carpet big enough, put those flanges, measure your bass drum, get the spurs in there. That bass drum isn't going anywhere. That's my contribution, folks.
On my own drum rug, I've got a 2x4 bolted down.
I'm seeing that.
The front.
That works
and
too.
That works pretty well for me. So that's been all right. Yeah.
That's a good one, man. I know. I tell you what, you mentioned Texas. The worst experience, I think, and I've had plenty learning the hardware about a bass drum slide, and forgive the grotesque nature of this story, but we played South by Southwest, went down there, same thing you're talking about, playing a house kit, and it was sliding everywhere. And from the first song, the bass drum was sliding. I was having to pull it back, everything. It was a mounted tom. So then the mounted tom was swinging out. The cymbals were moving.
Yep.
I'm adjusting a kit while I'm playing
Yep.
it. And right when I started, I was like, I'm about to shit my pants.
Oh, no.
So I was like, how am I not going to shit my pants when I'm literally bashing and pulling, adjusting a drum set
right.
throughout a set. And I unfortunately, it would be great if I said I shit my pants. I managed to not, but I just felt like the entire time I had lava boiling in my stomach.
Ooh-wee.
And the drum set was sliding everywhere. It was fucking terrible, dude.
Yeah,
that was my worst sliding drum set experience. Not only because of the other experience as well. It was terrible.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it comes up on this show, but it's just a thing of as a drummer, if you can get used to not playing your own kit and get used to, I don't know how you get used to it, but you just practice shit moving around or something, you're gonna be better off for it. Because now
absolutely,
I'm to the point now where that stuff doesn't even faze me anymore. I'm just
yeah.
But at the time I was
Here
really freaking out, Now I'm just oh, okay, well, I'm playing it over here now. I'm not doing that anymore, just switch it.
Totally.
Move on.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man. Do you have any warm-up regimen, or can you just pretty much sit down and go?
I warm up for sure. I used to not, and then I started doing it, and it's worked out for me. But it's a fairly mindless one, which I think is kind of an important aspect to it, where all I do is just do hands just straight.
Yep.
Right, left, just on a pad, and feet the exact same at the same time. Get them both going. Just try to avoid cramping, basically, in ankles or wrists, and especially if I'm playing faster stuff. I just stole that from a drummer, this dude Cato, who used to play with this band Enslaved. That's what he would do before they would play every night for 20 minutes. And so that's what I do, and just to kind of get the blood flowing and try to avoid cramping up. That's the whole regimen. Nothing special, but it's worked out for me.
So hands and feet in unison for an extended.
Yep.
That's not the first time I've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get into that myself probably, because I'd be like, my hands are good, and then I'd get out there and be like, my feet are fucked.
Yeah.
And then or my calves or whatever, or I'd warm up and then I'd take a break and maybe I wasn't hydrated right, and then my hands feel like I've got concrete flowing through my veins, and I've got these boxing glove bloated, weird, painful hands, and then you have to play through that, and then it comes back, everything loosens. But you experience all that shit. It's different for everybody.
Oh, totally. I try to do it like pretty close to going on stage and playing, because if I sit too long, it kind of loses the effect or whatever.
That's the thing. Yeah, for sure.
That's key. Although, like, there's a certain point on tour, like after a stretch, where I feel like you're just permanently warmed up. You don't really need to do it.
Right.
But I'll still do it just to get the blood moving, really, blood flowing more than anything.
Totally. I dig the Dio track that y'all did, Rainbow in the Dark, and it's crazy because with Ronnie James Dio, the RJD, whether it's Elf Rainbow, Black Sabbath, or solo Dio, there's so much throughout time that he puts his hands on it. I've dug everything that he's done. He's one of those guys that's been that consistent and that awesome throughout time. Are you partial to the Sabbath, the Rainbow, or the solo Dio? Do you have a favorite?
I really am like you. Like, I like it all. I think Sabbath era Dio rules and is underrated.
100%.
Rainbow is amazing, although
amazing.
I worked with this dude who listened to Rainbow every day, and it started to burn it out for me. Yeah, and then kind of solo Dio. Oh, it's all so good.
I have Holy Diver and Last in Line both on vinyl, and
same.
I've got I definitely have Mob Rules.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I have Heaven and Hell. I don't think I do. And then I've got like Long Live Rock and Roll and Rainbow Rising.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love all that shit. I talk about him so much. Cozy Powell and his drumming on those Rainbow records, always killer. But I mean, honestly, Vinny Appice as well with Dio, and even on some of the Sabbath stuff, Vinny is killing on that stuff. Dude. He sounds totally badass.
Vinny's awesome, man. I think I'm a in the pocket drummer, and so like I love that kind of shit. And those guys aren't necessarily that, but there's some, especially like some of the solo Dio stuff is more that way.
Yeah,
and I love that kind of drumming. I think it's so cool. Like one of my favorite guys who does a similar thing to Vinny, where it's like is Brian Downey from Thin Lizzy, but it's like it's super in the pocket, but if you pay attention, there's all these sneaky little fills that are tricky in there.
Absolutely.
It'll change the timing, and you don't need to notice it to enjoy the song. That's what I love. It works.
That's great.
It's like writing for the song, but also spicing it up. I always say, like, for me, I feel like I'm a meat and potatoes drummer, but you got to spice it right for it to be tasty, So
fair enough, man. Yeah. That's amazing. I was thinking about sort of kindred spirits with your band, and I've talked to Marcus from Spirit Adrift.
Yeah, hell yeah, I love Marcus, man.
What are some other bands that you feel like might be kindred spirits with what you do, and or some of the cool bands that y'all toured with or played shows with, just period?
Yeah, I mean, Spirit Adrift is definitely one, and I'm glad to have been able to get to know those dudes, and look forward to hanging out with Marcus whenever I see him around, for sure.
Yeah.
We're kind of all over the map, but I mean, we did a tour with Enslaved and Wolves in the Throne Room, and
crazy.
Those guys are really cool, and the Enslaved guys and us, we just really got along really well. Liked hanging out with them quite a bit. As far as like contemporaries and stuff, we kind of like are all over the map with who we tour with and what we play with stylistically, different bands.
I dig that personally. I like mixing up a bill. I mean,
me too.
I don't know if I guess there are some people that are maybe such a fan of a particular subgenre that they'd be cool if it's like a night build as that, and you get like 5 doom bands or 5 stoner bands. But
yeah, it's
kind of cool to mix it up a little bit, switch it up. I always appreciate that as a spectator personally.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess in our genre, we look a lot to like Yob and High on Fire and those bands, and Neurosis, of course. And
right,
I'm like you, and I also play in a couple other bands that are like faster and mostly blasting and that kind of thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, what bands are those?
Playing a band called Black Curse, which is like a black death metal band, and then another one called Go Ahead and Die, with we just put out an album on Nuclear Blast earlier this year as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. Right on. I'll have to check it out.
It's with Max Cavalier and his youngest son Igor.
Look at you playing the slow doomy stuff and then getting into the blast beat world. Those are those can be two different worlds.
100%. I mean, I started playing death metal. That kind of stuff drew me in at early on, and then was like, you know, joined Khemmis and had to figure out how to do that. So,
either way, you're figuring it out one way or the other. I don't know which way is harder. If you start fast and then you're like, how do I play slow? Or if you start slow and you're like, now I got to play fast. Honestly, it's hard either way. I don't know that one's easier than the other, dude.
definitely, but it's been really badass because like I've always loved like rock and roll as well as metal and like a bunch of other music too. But like this kind of lets me pull some of those rock and roll chops in and like play around with those that I wouldn't normally get to do necessarily on the other side of it. So
awesome. Well, like I said, you got the new record coming out in November. Do y'all have some shows booked to be getting out and doing?
Yeah, we got a 10-day run on the West Coast, second week of January. So we'll be hitting the road a little bit then, and more down the line that is yet to be announced. So.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's good. It'd be nice to get out and be playing shows, doing what you do.
For sure. Yeah, it's played a few shows in the last few months, and it feels really nice to be out doing it.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. Right on, dude. Well, Zach, it was fun talking to you, man. Appreciate the time. Best success going forward with the new record. Glad y'all are happy and doing your thing, and I'm interested definitely to hear the whole thing, knowing sort of a little bit about the process of it and whatnot. So, for sure. Yeah, man, it'll be fun to delve into it all.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time and talking to me, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Zach, for rapping. New Khemmis record, Deceiver, will be out everywhere November 19th. So get up on it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.